We are in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, here's a map. Beautiful place, lovely people. Very hot. You talk about a hot country. No, you ain't never seen a hot country. You need to go to Burkina Faso, you're going to be shocked. And this is from an African, an African speaking. I was shocked. I was like, can't the government just reduce the temperature or something? Anyway, so this is the president of Burkina Faso. His name is Ibrahim Traoré. Very interesting human being. He's very young, under 40 years old. A brand new president. He's rejected the West completely and their government. He's rejected in particular France that's been colonizing many African countries for many, many years. Now, Burkina Faso is confronted with a situation here. They went to buy airplanes. For the very first time, after 40 years, they were renting airplanes. And for the first time, they've got airplanes for the country to run domestically and internationally. This is the very first time they buy their own airplane. Burkina Airways or Burkina Airline. Anyway, they went to China. They sent people going to, investigate, look at the airplane, test the airplane, and then agree to the purchase of the airplane. Now he's confronted with a situation where mechanics in Burkina Faso, qualified mechanics, aero mechanics, people that treat airplanes, have all quit. They've all given their resignation because they wanted more money. And he's resolved to put them in the army by force. Let's watch.
Nous avons tous suivi les efforts qui ont été faits pour pouvoir acquérir un nouvel avion. La dernière fois, j'étais obligé de recevoir la semaine passée 2 mécaniciens de la compagnie qui, dès l'arrivée de l'avion le 2 du mois dernier, le 3 déposent une demande de démission. Et un dépose la demande de démission le 3 pour prendre effet le 4 et l'autre prenait effet donc le 31 octobre. Et pour cause, il demande une augmentation des salaires de plus de 2 millions. C'est du sabotage. Et je pense que c'est un manque de patriotisme grave. Le conseil d'administration a essayé, vaille que vaille, de les raisonner. Ils sont même allés faire des concessions jusqu'à 400 000 francs de plus sur leur salaire et tout. Ils ont refusé catégoriquement, ils ont refusé de travailler. Pendant qu'on sait bien que l'avion, à chaque vol, on a besoin de vérifier un certain nombre de choses pour qu'il puisse se relancer. Mais ils ont refusé de travailler pendant que le nouvel avion venait d'arriver. Ça, c'est du sabotage pur et dur. Un avion qui arrive le 2 et le 3, vous décidez de ne pas travailler, des mécaniciens. Nous étions obligés de les recevoir et de passer donc le message qu'ils vont travailler de gré ou de force.
Oh.
On ne demande pas à quelqu'un, nous n'allons pas négocier. Ils vont travailler. Et c'est ce qui est en train de se faire.
Wow.
Nous avons tous suivi.
So this is very interesting. This is Ibrahim Traoré, like I said to you earlier. So basically, these guys were hired by the company, by the state company, the aviation that belonged to the state. These are qualified engineers. Now, the planes were purchased in China. So they had to send a team of people to go and investigate, to test the plane, to make sure everything is functioning before bringing it to Africa. Now, let me remind you, this is the very first time Burkina Faso buys an aeroplane in 40 years. So in 40 years, Burkina Faso has been renting its airplanes. So for the very first time, they decided to buy an airplane that's going to be flying in the country and outside the country with the pride of the country. An airplane that's managed by Burkina Faso, an airplane fully bought by Burkina Faso, an airplane that is run, tested, committed by Burkina Faso. Now, the very next day they acquired the airplane, the team of mechanics have quit. They've handed their resignation, saying they wanted more money. So apparently, they said they wanted 3 million CFA franc. That's resolved very close to $5,000. $5,000 extra. Okay. Now, I know, prices vary. Salaries are not the same. Salaries in America, in Europe, and Africa are not the same. Okay. Because bottom line is in America, you get a lot of money as salary, but you pay half of it as tax. That's not the case in Africa. In Africa, most cases, people pay very little tax, like well underneath 10%. Except one or two countries where you pay 18% or 28%. But in most cases, very much less than 10%. Now, for somebody that earned $10,000 in America, paying almost half of it to the government, then remaining with $5,000, is not very rich or richer than a person that earns, $5,000 in Africa and pays only 10% to the government. Okay, let's get back on track. So these people asked for an extra 3 million CFA franc on top of their salary. So that's about $5,000. So initially, we know that in Africa, on the average, people earn about $2,500 as a mechanic in aeronautics. In most cases, not just in Africa, sometimes in the Middle East as well. About $2,500 a month. That's what they earn. Now, let's try to think together. You as a mechanic, for somebody to want to hire you, they must have seen your CV. They must have seen that you've got experience. They must have seen that you've done your dues, so they must have recruited you from another company, right? If you run aeroplanes and you want a business, you want to hire people that are working, that have experience. So for you to have accepted to leave your company and be on a standby, it means you've already agreed on a salary, right? Makes sense. Now, let's say you've agreed on a salary. Now the aeroplanes come, and before you start working, you end in your resignation. What does that mean? It means you have not been paid, right? You can't be paid because you haven't started working. So if you haven't started working, because you could say, maybe we paid you less than what you were waiting for, that's why you resignated. But you haven't been paid. So it means we haven't done anything. Nothing has changed. So the only way something could come from is you deciding to add more money into the money you had agreed upon. Okay, are we together? Now, Traoré president said they sent a team of people to negotiate with these guys to add more money to the money they had already agreed upon. So to give them some more, give them reasonable money. They refuse. They want an extra $5,000 to whatever, that's non-taxed, to whatever they had agreed upon. Mechanics in aeronautics are very, very necessary. Before a flight takes off, they need to double check the airplane. They need to make sure everything is functioning appropriately. The tires, the fuel, the fuse, the heat, the engine, everything, the cockpit. They need to double check everything, or else you're going to find an accident. Now, if mechanics refuse to work, an airplane cannot fly, because then you're putting everybody at risk. Now imagine you bring an airplane after investing money, time and resources. You've negotiated with the mechanics. You have the airplane sitting down, and the day it has to fly, they refuse to work because they want more money. That is unreasonable. And remember, the country is in crisis right now because they've kicked away the French, and they've had all the sponsorships and the money coming from World Bank cut off. The country right now is trying to put money together. Every citizen is contributing some of his percentage, some of the money from his salary into a big basket to allow the country to be run appropriately without the country having to resort to borrowing money from IMF or World Bank. So they are looking into each other to get the country moving and not crash because they kicked out the French. Now you have a bunch of people that work as mechanics who have been hired by government. They've agreed prior to whatever price. Then the day comes they need to function and work. For Burkina Airline, they refuse to do so because they want extra money. Governments, through the president, try to negotiate, sending people to add some more money. They refuse to work. So the president said, you know what? This is unpatriotic. Therefore, we are not negotiating with you anymore. You are going to work whether you like it or not. This is the situation it is right now. Now, I want to know, is this some type of dictatorship? Do you feel like this guy is going astray? Or do you feel like many people feel? Sometimes with some Africans, you need to have a language they understand. Somebody used to say, democracy is not for the less matured people. If you give democracy to the less matured people, what are they going to do? When they're angry, they will take their shit, okay, coming from the butt and put it to the face of the president, saying, hey, president, you're not doing a good job. They put the shit on his face and saying, it's the name of democracy. You can't put me in jail. That is my democracy. Freedom of speech. That's the way I express myself. Democracy, for some other people, they will know. They can scream, but they cannot go through the limits. They know what the limits are. But unfortunately, some other people don't know what the limits are. So giving everybody democracy, it's not a good thing. You should build the people into becoming Democrats. It takes years to learn respect and boundaries before living in a democratic society, or else people will do all sort of nonsense. Do you think in some points especially in the point where the Burkina Faso is. They need to force people to do some task in the name of the nation and in the name of the country, whether they like it or not. Because what they're doing is unreasonable to the country, and that's going to bring a big failure to the country. I really want to know how you feel about this. Let me just remind you here, a few weeks ago, there was a bunch of lawmakers that put pressure on the president, saying the president is not doing the election because supposedly the country is at war. Now, the war is not in Burkina Faso, they said. Now, what did the president do? The president said, you're accusing me of not holding election because you're saying I am lying, saying there's no war in the country. Therefore, I am taking you guys, you lawmakers, you lawyers that are accusing me of withholding power. I am taking you to the front where the war is. Then you're going to tell us whether the war really is in Burkina Faso or not. So it took a bunch of people, gave them weapons. These are lawmakers, and sent them to front. He said, since you said I'm lying, I'm saying there's war, you said there's no war, I should be holding election. Let me take you to war. Therefore, you're going to tell people whether there's war or not. Let me know how you feel about this. It's always a great pleasure. God bless.